we are now in a position where we're short of people and we're short of equipment. And that's not a good position to be in.
Maybe I can turn my attention. I wasn't planning on going to this area yet, but maybe I can turn my attention to Canada as a military force for a second. Like many of our Canada, like many of its European contemporaries, really as a peacetime dividend has allowed its military to wane. And that era is seemingly coming to an end, and a new story is, I think, starting to unfold. And it's a story that's significantly different from the one that many saw coming when Trump kind of encouraged greater global investments in defense, as he's been doing for years. Um, Watching Ukraine's remarkable resilience against a much larger aggressor has challenged many of the assumptions of what military strength actually even means, right? I mean, Ukraine has shown that logistics, mobilization capacity, distributed technology, these can sometimes matter more than billion-dollar aircraft programs. And Canada, which has traditionally kind of relied on high cost procurement, the F-35 and others, might our basically our scale, our geography, and above all, our military starting point may argue for a different kind of investment. And so, from your vantage point at the UN, do you see a path for Canada and middle powers to punch above their weight by focusing less on prestige platforms and more on scalable logistics, cyber defense, drone networks, rapid response supply infrastructure? Could a shift towards those capacities redefine how middle powers like Canada contribute meaningfully to global security and thus play an ever larger role in a multipolar and a rougher world?
You ask very long questions, Mark, and mainly you also do something which I've gotten used to in the business of dealing with journalists and reporters over many, many years. The answer is contained in your question, and the answer is yes.
The answer is yes.
Yes, we'd be making a big mistake if we didn't learn from the success of countries like Ukraine and others that have looked to how we apply our skill set. For example, we have some capacity in AI, we have some capacity in cyber, and that's what our military is being asked to do by the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is asking the military to think through our strategy in such a way that we can, in fact, look at the broader experience of a number of different countries of different sizes in terms of where and how they want to spend their money and how they want to build up their strength. And that's partly a matter of technology and making decisions about what platforms you invest in. It's also a matter of focusing on recruitment and training and the skill sets that you need in your military. Should we be spending more on military? I think it's inevitable. I think it's also important for us to continue to assess on an ongoing basis to make sure that we don't go through huge swings of the pendulum, which we've gone through since the 1980s, basically, when governments, conservative and liberal, both decided that we didn't actually need to spend as much money on equipment, and we didn't need to spend that much money on people. And we ended up not doing so. And then we are now in a position where we're short of people and we're short of equipment. And that's not a good position to be in. And again, the government of Canada is trying to remedy that situation. And I think there will be, I hope it'll become more of a public debate and a public argument, because oftentimes in Canada, in our political culture, these issues are very much kept close to the chest. But I'm a big believer in expanding the scope of debate and discussion about, well, what technology should we have, and how do we take advantage of our skill set that we do have, and what do we do about the recruitment problem? Because we do have a recruitment issue right now in the military.
You mentioned that these problems are things that to some degree go under the public radar. So advise us, because you're obviously actively connected with the existing government. You have close connections with a whole range of people who make these decisions. The questions that we are addressing here today, we're having some adventure in tech land today. I guess the reason I'm asking these questions is because, as someone who isn't in government, I'm not privy to whether or not these discussions are taking place and how they're taking place.
They are. I don't want to interrupt you, but Of course they are. They are taking place on a regular basis. But I believe what we need in Canada is a much more public debate rather than a closed debate. I think we need to have a much more open discussion about these policy issues because I think they're critically important. I mean, if you read when you read the headlines, you find out that the government has asked for an assessment as to which technology, which airplanes, which naval equipment and others do we need, and it's an area that's full of lobbying and full of special interests pushing one answer or another. And I just think we need a much broader debate and discussion that goes beyond a closed shop in Ottawa.